In 2016, in the heart of Alabama, a beloved high school chemistry teacher was quietly running a meth lab out of his garage. Not in a movie. Not in a TV show. In real life. Benjamin Wells wasn't some hardened criminal. He was a soft-spoken educator, a churchgoer, a man who once stayed late after school to help struggling students. But what no one knew was that Mr. Wells had crossed a line most of us only hear about on crime dramas. He wasn't just inspired by Breaking Bad, he lived it. Behind his suburban walls, beneath fluorescent lights and chemical fumes, he became something else entirely. A man with a double life. A secret that boiled, quite literally, under the surface of everyday normalcy. What pushed him there? And how long did it take before his quiet world collapsed? This isn't fiction. This actually happened. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. Before everything fell apart, Benjamin Wells lived what many would call an ordinary, even dull life. He taught chemistry at Jefferson High School in Birmingham, same classroom for over 20 years. Every morning, he drove his faded silver Honda Civic to school, arriving 15 minutes early like clockwork. He packed his own lunch, always a turkey sandwich, an apple, and a black coffee in a thermos with a chipped Auburn University logo. His students liked him. He wasn't loud or funny, but he explained things well. Made chemistry feel simple. Safe. After school, he'd return to his modest brick home on the edge of town, water his plants, feed his cat named Boomer, and sometimes grade papers while old jazz records played in the background. A quiet man. Reliable. But lately, something had shifted. He seemed distracted in class, staying long after the halls had emptied. Neighbors noticed a faint chemical smell near the garage. And no one could explain the new locks, or why Benjamin had started covering the windows. Something was changing. It started with a single phone call. One of Benjamin's former students, a dropout with a rough past, reached out, asking to meet. Late evening, in a half-empty diner off Highway 280, they sat across from each other, barely touching their food. The conversation was quiet, but intense. That night, Benjamin came home later than usual. He didn't turn on the porch light. And the very next day, he called in sick, something he hadn't done in over 5 years. From then on, small things began to shift. The garage, once used for storing garden tools, now buzzed with the hum of equipment. Neighbors noticed him wearing gloves outside, even when it wasn't cold. Odd deliveries arrived in plain boxes. No return addresses. In the classroom, his hands trembled ever so slightly when holding beakers. And during a routine lab demo, he paused, mid-sentence, staring at the swirling liquid a little too long. It wasn't panic. It was focus. Precision. As if he saw something no one else did. Something just beginning. This was no midlife crisis. This was the start of something far more dangerous. And it had only just begun. Over the next few weeks, the strange became routine. Benjamin stopped attending staff meetings, claiming migraines. He installed blackout curtains, not just in the garage, but across the entire back half of his house. Late at night, neighbors reported a low, rhythmic thumping, like industrial fans or compressors running behind closed doors. One neighbor, walking her dog, noticed a sharp chemical odor in the air, not strong, but distinct. Acrid. Metallic. Benjamin's appearance began to change too. His clothes were more wrinkled, his eyes ringed with shadows. In the faculty lounge, he stared off into space, missing whole conversations. He wasn't sleeping much. But it wasn't fear in his eyes, it was calculation. In his garage, he had begun recording notes, adjusting formulas, refining something. He told himself it was just curiosity. A side project. Nothing serious. But every step took him further down a path he couldn't name. And deep down, in the silence between chemical reactions, a quiet thought began to surface: what if I don't stop? The breaking point came on a stormy Friday night in late October. Rain pounded the roof as Benjamin stood in his garage, watching the latest batch cool inside a glass condenser. It was no longer an experiment, it was a product. Refined, pure, and disturbingly perfect. That evening, the same former student returned, this time with a duffel bag and a cold stare. He wasn't there for tutoring. He wanted supply. And he had brought cash, a lot of it. Benjamin hesitated, heart pounding, hands trembling not from fear, but from recognition. This wasn't theory anymore. This was distribution. And when he unzipped the bag and saw the stacks of bills, something inside him twisted. But he didn't say no. He handed over the batch. As the student left, Benjamin looked at his blue-gloved hands, then around the garage, lab tables, reagent bottles, exhaust fans humming through the night. He realized what he'd become, and that there was no, just one time. That moment rewrote the story. The teacher had vanished. What stood in his place now was something else entirely. Just days after that first exchange, Benjamin drove past a small headline in the local paper that made his stomach drop: 2 hospitalized after suspected meth overdose, unknown source. The location? Just 10 miles from his school. No names were released, but Benjamin knew. Knew the timeline. Knew the chemistry. Knew the purity. He sat in his car for almost an hour, the engine running, rain sliding down the windshield. His thoughts spiraled. What if it was his batch? The one he had cooked, measured, packaged. Suddenly, it wasn't just money. It was blood. His hands, once used to guide young minds through formulas and lab safety rules, were now linked, possibly, to pain, poison, maybe death. He wanted to believe he still had control. That he could stop. But control was gone the moment he handed over that first bag. Now, the guilt was growing louder than the jazz records he used to play. And for the first time, Benjamin Wells was afraid of what he had done, and what he might do next. One cold November evening, as Benjamin prepared another batch, headlights swept across his garage windows. He froze. A car idled outside, engine running. Not a neighbor. Not the student. Someone new. Minutes passed. Then a knock, firm, deliberate, not the kind that waits. Benjamin opened the side door a crack and met the eyes of a man he didn't recognize. Leather jacket. No smile. Just a quiet warning: your work's getting noticed. Keep it coming. No mistakes. No name. No contact. Just a presence, and a threat. When the car finally pulled away, Benjamin stood in the garage, heart pounding, chemicals still simmering behind him. It wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a trap. A machine he couldn't turn off. He wasn't in control. He was being watched, owned, and maybe, tested. If he quit now, what would they do? If he stayed in, how far would it go? His hands shook as he reached for the next flask. The line between teacher and criminal had vanished. And now, something darker had taken notice. It all came crashing down on a freezing December morning. Benjamin arrived at school to find squad cars outside, flashing lights cutting through the pale winter sky. But they weren't there for him, not yet. News spread fast: a student had overdosed. A sophomore. One of his own. The boy had survived, barely, but the drug was traced back to a batch, one with Benjamin's unique chemical signature. Panic gripped him like a vice. He left early, driving in circles for hours, trying to outrun the weight in his chest. That night, in the silence of his darkened garage, he stared at the glass vials, the burners, the money. And for the first time, he considered ending it, destroying everything. Running. Or worse. But then, he opened a folder. Inside, a stack of letters from students. Thank you notes. Praise. One line caught him like a whisper from another life. You made me believe I wasn't a failure. His hands trembled. There was still something left in him, maybe not innocence, but a sliver of conscience. Just enough, to fight back. Maybe. As the new year dawned, Benjamin found an unexpected ally, his former chemistry colleague, Dr. Elaine Harper, who had recently returned to Birmingham after years in pharmaceutical research. When Benjamin confessed everything during a quiet, tense meeting in her small office, Elaine didn't recoil in judgment. Instead, she offered help, not just with legal advice, but with a plan. Together, they worked to dismantle his secret lab safely, collecting evidence to expose the shadowy network pressuring Benjamin to keep producing. Elaine's calm expertise and steady presence gave Benjamin a fragile hope. Slowly, he began reaching out to the students affected, supporting recovery efforts anonymously. The weight of guilt didn't vanish, but the crushing fear did. It was a long road ahead, but for the first time in months, Benjamin felt he could reclaim his life. The teacher who once lost himself in darkness was starting to find the light again. A small victory, but a real one. Years later, Benjamin Wells is no longer the man he used to be. The quiet teacher from Birmingham who once brewed meth in a desperate bid to escape life's shadows now volunteers at local recovery centers, sharing his story anonymously, a cautionary tale of choices and consequences. The scars remain, visible and invisible, but so does a fragile hope. His life is a reminder that even the most ordinary people can be pushed to unimaginable extremes, and that redemption, while difficult, is never out of reach. What would you do if faced with the same impossible crossroads? Could you walk away, or would you risk everything? The line between right and wrong is thinner than we think. If Benjamin's story moved you, hit subscribe, share your thoughts below, and join us as we uncover more true tales that challenge what we believe about the human spirit.